welcome back to our course. Today, we're tackling one of the core fundamentals of video editing, cutting and trimming your clips. This is a backbone of refining any project. Whether it's a short video for social media or a full-length documentary, cutting and trimming helps you remove unnecessary parts such as long pauses, focus on key moments, and shape the flow of your story. Cutting and trimming will take up a significant portion of your editing time, as you'll need to work through the entire timeline. For instance, you might start with a 20-minute video, but after trimming, you'll be left with a 10-minute video. Cutting and trimming are essential techniques you will use in nearly every video editing project. But what's the difference between the two? Let's start with cutting. This involves removing parts of your video entirely. Maybe there's a long pause, an awkward take, or an unnecessary shot. Cutting helps streamline your footage, leaving only the most important elements. Trimming is all about adjusting the start and end points of your clips. Instead of deleting entire section, you fine-tune the timing to make sure each shot flows seamlessly into the next. Here is how you can do this in Adobe Premiere Pro. Follow along with me. Drag and drop the video clip you want to edit into the timeline. Use the razor tool C on your keyboard to cut your clip at specific points. Simply click where you want to make the cut, and Premiere Pro will split your clips into separate sections. This is great for removing parts in the middle of your footage, like awkward pauses or mistakes that you do not want to see. To trim your clip, switch to the selection tool V on your keyboard, hover over the edge of your clip, and you'll see a red bracket appear. Simply click and drag to adjust the start or end points of the clip. This helps you to trim out unnecessary sections at the beginning or at the end of your clip. Want to speed things up? Use the Ripple Edit tool, B on your keyboard, to trim a clip and automatically shift the rest of your timeline to close the gap. No need to drag everything manually. Tips for effective cutting and trimming. Here are a few key tips to make your cuts and trims look professional. Cut on action. When possible, make your cuts during moments of movement. For example, if someone is walking, cut mid-stride to make the transition smoother and more natural. Keep pacing in mind. The pacing of your cuts affects how your story flows. Fast cuts creates energy and excitement, while slower cuts can add drama or tension. Be mindful of the rhythm you are creating. Trim excessive footage. Avoid unnecessary intros or long pauses. Keep your content focused and engaging by trimming out anything that doesn't add value to the story. Common pitfalls to avoid. Here is what to watch out for. Avoid jarring cuts. If you cut between two very different shots, it can feel unnatural. Always aim for smooth transitions by cutting on similar movements or using transitions if necessary. Over trimming. Be careful not to trim too much. You don't want to lose essential parts of your footage. Watch through your edits to make sure nothing important gets left behind. Here is me cutting and trimming clips in my timeline. Coming up, we'll be covering how to split and rearrange clips on your timeline. Video 2. Hey there, welcome back in this video. In this video, we are going to dive into another fundamental editing skill, splitting and rearranging clips on the timeline. This is where the magic of storytelling really comes alive as you piece together your clips to create a cohesive flow. Introduction to splitting and rearranging clips. Let's first talk about why splitting and rearranging clips is so important. When you're working on a video project, you won't necessarily use all your footage as is. Sometimes you will need to split long clips into smaller segments and then rearrange them to tell the story in the best possible way. Splitting. Splitting means cutting your clips into smaller parts. It's useful when you want to remove unnecessary segments or isolate key moments. Rearranging. Once your clips are split, you can move them around on the timeline to structure the sequence in a way that makes sense narratively. Here is a step-by-step guide to splitting your clips in Adobe Premiere Pro. 1. Select the clip. First, drag your clip from the media bin into the timeline. Choose the razor tool. You will need the razor tool C on your keyboard to split the clip. Simply click where you want to make the cut. This divides the clip into two parts, refining the split. You can zoom in on the timeline. Use the plus key to ensure precision in your cuts. especially when you're dealing with moments that need to be timed perfectly. This is a quick and easy way to break down long footage into smaller, more manageable pieces. Rearranging clips on the timeline. Now that you've split your clips, it's time to rearrange them to create the perfect flow. Select the clip. Use the selection tool V on your keyboard to click on any split clip. Drag and drop. Simply click and drag the clip to a new location on the timeline. Premiere Pro will snap the clip into place between other clips, like this. Ripple delete for smooth transitions. If you're moving clips and there's an empty space left behind, right-click on the gap and choose Ripple delete to automatically close the gap. This saves time and keeps your timeline tidy. We'll look more into ripple edits in the next video. Tips for splitting and rearranging like a pro. Here are some tips to take your editing skills to the next level. Cut on natural pauses. When splitting dialogues or scenes, always cut on natural pauses or between sentences. This makes transition less jarring. Watch your flow. After rearranging, play back your timeline to ensure everything flows well. Sometimes you will need to adjust further or even undo. A rearrangement. Duplicate clips for safety. If you're unsure about splitting a clip, you want to duplicate it first. That is Command+C or Command+V on Mac, or Control+C or Control+V on Windows, and work on the copy. Splitting and rearranging clips is a foundational skill that allows you to shape your video to perfection. Keep practicing, and soon you will be editing like a pro. In the next video, we'll look at ripple and roll edits. Let's keep going. Ripple and roll edits. Now, let's look more into ripple and roll edits. These advanced cutting methods will help you make precise adjustments to your video, ensuring your edits are smooth and your storytelling is on point. What are ripple and roll edits? A ripple edit allows you to trim a clip and automatically adjust the rest of the timeline to fill the gap or shift forward to accommodate the change. This is perfect for tightening up scenes without leaving empty spaces. Roll edits. With a roll edits, you are adjusting the boundary between two clips. You are shortening one clip while extending the adjacent one, but the total duration remains the same. It's like fine-tuning the transition point between clips. These techniques are essential for refining edits quickly and maintaining continuity. How to perform a ripple edit in Adobe Premiere Pro. Let's go step by step on how to execute a ripple edit in Adobe Premiere Pro. So first, you want to drag and drop your video on the timeline. Choose the ripple edit tool from the toolbar, or press B on your keyboard. Click on the end of the clip you want to trim and drag it to the left or right. You will see the adjacent clips automatically shift to fill the space or adjust the gap. And as usual, always play back your timeline to see how the edit affects the flow of your video. Ripple edits are great for speeding up a slow sequence or tightening up conversations. How to perform a roll edit in Adobe Premiere Pro. Let's talk about roll edits, which are perfect when you need to adjust the cut points between two clips without altering the timeline's total length. Drag any two video clips into the timeline. Access the rolling edit tool by clicking it in the toolbar or press N on your keyboard. Hover between two clips in the timeline. When you see the red rolling edit icon, click and drag to adjust in and out points simultaneously. One clip will be shortened while the other is extended. The roll edit is excellent for refining transitions, such as adjusting the timing of a conversation or action scene without throwing off the overall flow. Tips for mastering ripple and roll edits. Here are some tips to help you master these advanced cutting techniques. Trim in small increments. When using these tools, trim in small increments and preview the results. Small adjustments can make a big difference in the flow of your video. Undo is your friend. Don't hesitate to use the undo function. Ctrl+Z or Command+Z on Mac if an edit doesn't look right. You can always tweak and perfect your cuts. Congratulations! You've just mastered one of the most time-consuming aspects of video editing. Now, we are moving into the fun part, where your creativity shines and you craft a compelling story. In the next video, we'll dive into exciting process of polishing your edits by adding basic transitions to your video, applying basic transitions, cuts and fades. In this video, we are going to dive into one of the most fundamental aspects of video editing, transitions. Specifically, we'll be focusing on two key transitions, cuts and fades. These are simple yet powerful tools that can significantly change your storytelling and improve the flow of your videos. Let's get started. So what are transitions? Before we jump into applying them, let's define what transitions are. Transitions are techniques used to move smoothly from one shot to the next. They help your video flow seamlessly and keep your audience engaged. There are many transitions available in editing softwares, but for this video, we'll focus on the most essential and widely used transitions, which is cuts and fades. Let's start with the most basic and often most effective transition, the cut. Cuts are instantaneous changes from one clip to the next. They don't use any special effects. They're powerful because they maintain the pace and the rhythm of your video. Cuts are especially useful for keeping a fast tempo or sharp transition between the scenes. Here is how you apply cuts in Adobe Premiere Pro. Drag a clip to the timeline. Make sure your clips are aligned on the timeline, one after the other. A cut happens naturally between the end of one clip and the beginning of the next. Trim and adjust. Use the razor tool C on your keyboard to make precise cuts if you need to remove any unwanted parts of your clips. This tool allows you to control where exactly your cuts occur. Playback. Once your clips are in place, simply hit play to preview the cut transition. If the cuts feel too abrupt, don't worry. We'll discuss how to smooth things out with fades next. Using fades for smooth transitions. Now, let's talk about fades, which are perfect for giving your videos more polished and cinematic feel. Fades gradual transition between two clips by blending one out and the other in. There are two common types of fades, fade in or out and crossfade. Let's start with fade in or out. This transition starts and ends a scene by gradually fading the footage from or into black. It's often used to opening or closing a video. Crossfade or dissolve. Crossfades or dissolve blend two clips together. One image gradually disappears as the other comes into view. Here's how to apply fades in Premiere Pro. Fade in or out. Select the clip you want to fade in or out. Right-click and select Apply Default Transition or go to the Effects panel. Search for the Deep to Black transition, then drag and drop it into the start or end of your clip. Adjust the length of the fade by dragging the edge of the transition to control how quickly or slowly the fade occurs. Crossfade or dissolve. To create a crossfade, go to the Effects panel and find Cross Dissolve. Drag and drop it between two clips on your timeline. Adjust the transition length by extending or shortening the dissolve effect to control how gradually the fade is. Play back to preview your edit. Now the cut does not feel abrupt, it feels smooth. Best practices for using cuts and fades. While cuts and fades are simple transitions, how you use them can make or break your video. Use cuts for fast pacing. When you want to keep the energy high or create an abrupt shift in tone or scene, cuts are your best friend. They help maintain momentum and work well in action sequences, interviews, and fast-paced edits. Use fades for emotional impact. Fades are perfect for transition in emotional or reflective scenes. They give your audience a moment to process and can significantly change in time or setting without being too jarring. Don't overuse fades. While fades are effective, be careful not to overuse them. Too many fades can slow down your video and make it feel less dynamic. Now that you know how to apply cuts and fades, experiment with them in your next project and see how they can improve the flow and feel of your video. Our job is not done yet. Stay tuned for the next lesson, where we'll dive into adding music and sound effects to match your visuals.